Black Magic Woman podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on. We also acknowledge traditional owners of the land where you, the listener or viewer, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to our elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was Aboriginal land and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bayles.
Welcome to another deadly episode of the Black Magic Woman podcast. Without further ado, I just want to say I am so excited for the fact that we're not doing this via Zoom,
me
but
too.
we're here face to face.
I'm so grateful.
I'm in Brisbane, same time you're in Brisbane, and I've been following you. I've been following you from other people's kind of socials. We know somebody who I might talk about in a moment, and then bang, we started following each other.
Yep.
But I just want to say thank you for joining me on
Thank
this
you so much for having me, sis.
amazing
I'm
podcast.
so grateful to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. So, for all of my guests, I'd like to hand over the microphone to you. So, tell us your name, your mob, and a little bit about where you grew up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sene Maluwapi. I'm a proud Malu Kiwai woman from Boigu in the Torres Strait Islands. I grew up in Adelaide, South Australia, so right down south. Growing up, it was pretty rough for me. I went for a lot of bullying and racism, but I decided to rise up from that, and I moved out of home at the age of 15, which was, pretty crazy. It was a big step of faith, but I was in a dark place at the time. I went to a private school and I was your token Indigenous kid.
What private school was that one?
I actually went to Emmanuel College.
Emmanuel College?
Yes.
All right.
And I got a scholarship for the sport I played. So I played netball and football. And unfortunately there, I just was slapped with racism to the point where it just had me in such a small spot.
Yeah, of course it does. And actually, I think most people don't realise this, but the literature, here we are trying to use these big English words. There's a lot of literature that says that racism makes people sick. And we're talking about not just physically or psychologically, but mentally and emotionally unwell. So being on the receiving end of racism and discrimination as part of your teenage years, school years.
Yeah, and it was hard. I growing up in Adelaide, in primary school, I had changed 6 times because I think
we changed 10 times.
Yeah,
this is not uncommon,
and
right?
then high school, it was about 5 high schools. It was hard.
Yeah, mine was 3. We went to 14 different schools.
Literally, you just because there was always something going on, and just having to teach yourself to hold yourself up and be the bigger person.
To be resilient.
To be resilient. And, there were some times when you would react and you'd easily get labelled as the angry black.
Of course.
The angry black kid in class. And the teacher would be like, oh, that one's always naughty. Yeah. And you just always feel like what you do was never enough.
But you're not believed.
Yeah. And even, when I was at the private school, I think the hardest thing was I was communicating that I was receiving racism at school, but it only mattered my performance in sport. That was their priority. It wasn't how I was inside. It was how I was performing and how I was making them look. And I think that's the thing that really matters to me now in the form of work I do. I only want to work and meet with people and connect with them, that it's that respect. We're not just using each other. We're both receiving. We're both meeting each other halfway.
Well, I've got to ask you this really, really quickly. Did you end up finishing year 12?
No.
So you dropped out of school because of...
So after that, I went online. So I did this thing called Open Access College, and they're based in South Australia. So I moved 2020, and at 2020 I was 15. I moved from Adelaide to Brisbane by myself, and my older sister, she lived here, but I didn't move in with her. Interesting, a week before I had I had a friend who I knew back from Adelaide, moved here, and he had a spare room, and then the week before he was like, sorry sis, I've given it away. And I was 15 moving 2,000 km away from home.
For people that are not familiar with the geography of Australia, Boigu Island is closer to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah,
this is where
highest point of Australia.
This beautiful sister is from, right? From the top of Australia, closer to the border of Papua New Guinea. Then growing up over in South Australia, in Adelaide, and then from Adelaide coming to Queensland to Brisbane.
Yeah.
At 15?
At 15. And
Stop
it was
it.
so scary. I was so scared. I had been working, so she was a little hustler from a young age. Like when I was 13, my mum's best friend had a cafe, so I was working there. You were able to work in hospitality at that age in Adelaide. I was always working. I was always just like, my mum was the arts and cultural officer at the local council down there. So I was always at like arts events. I always knew that I wanted to be around something giving back to my community. And, you know, before I left, my mum it was a big deal to say goodbye to your 15-year-old daughter and say, yep, you can leave. Like she was so
supportive.
At first, no, she was freaking out. I was the last 15. one. I was a baby. She was scared.
So how many siblings?
So I'm me and my sister for my mum. So I have elder brothers, but for mum it was just us two. And so it was the last one to leave home, and I wasn't 18 yet, and it was scary. And it was really hard, but I looked her in the eye on the last day I left, and I just said, Mum, I love you, but you understand in 6 months, a year, however long it may take, that this is not, we were suffocating as well because of all the stuff I was enduring. I was in a pain body. That's so, I've read a lot of books. I have a psychologist now, you know, I'm all about healing. Self-care, you know, obviously
mental
as
health
well.
Matters.
I've seen people in my family, elders to me, you know, be consumed and say, oh, this happened when I was a child. And I understand that we all have trauma, but it's about touching those wounds because like they're gonna come back if you don't heal from them. And that's why I'm so grateful that I was strong on that. And I think, you know, I did see my older brothers kind of fall into that generational trauma and I'm this way because of that.
All of those symptoms in terms of, I think people don't understand that trauma is actually in the memory of our DNA.
It is.
You do not need to pass on sad stories to transfer trauma from one generation to another. There's some really amazing statistics that I would love to share really quickly, sis, that
100%.
People who experience trauma are 15 times more likely to die by suicide. The fact that Aboriginal youth are the highest than anywhere else in the world to die by suicide. Well, look at the last 230 years of the history of this country and being oppressed people, being put onto missions and reserves and having every aspect of our lives controlled by the state, where we could live, who we could marry, whether we could keep our children and whether or not we got paid for the work and all of that stuff, you know, being slavery and stuff. 4 times more likely to become an alcoholic, 4 times more likely to inject drugs, 3 times more likely to experience depression, 3 times more likely to experience serious job problems. Like people, this is not, you know, Aboriginal culture.
It's not.
You know, do not confuse social problems with our culture because they're 2 different things.
Very different.
So I've got 8 sisters. 4 of them have been in and out of jail. Kids being taken.
My elder brother's been
substance abuse. So I get you. I hear you, and it's not hard to break the cycle. I mean, it's not easy.
It's not easy, but
you have to want
to do
to.
it. You can write your story. That's what I try to tell all my young cousins as well. Like there's always something in the family, you know, there's always something going on. And I always tell my baby sisters, even my baby boys, if they listen to me, I just say one time, you get to write your story, my darling. And I know it's hard. I know you feel heavy and I know you can easily be consumed by all these feelings right now. And it feels like everything's against your odds. But you can change that and you can believe in yourself one time and you can actually change that mentality and really push for more. But also, it's easier said than done. And I tell them that, you know. You can't be what you can't see. Exactly. And if you're there now doubting yourself, you're not gonna receive those things. But if you're sitting there I can do this. I'm
mixing it with other mob and kind of, you know, being, you know, I always say that we are a product of our environment, right?
Who you surround yourself with,
that's exactly
be around mob that are empowering, doing stuff
or trying to make
the way I watch myself grow. I'm 19 now, and the way I've been in Sydney for a year, moved there fresh 18, and even just I say every month, it's 4 months every now and then when I see my sisters, my family, and it's just every time they're you've grown again, because I'm always hanging around mob people, even older people that I'm just elders that I can listen to. I love to learn because
those support networks.
And it's so good to have those in place because I feel like it just helps me be a stronger young woman, especially down Sydney. I'm not gonna lie, it's very cutthroat there, you know, Even it's very cliquey.
What led you to go to Sydney? Like, what was it a phone call? Was it an opportunity?
It was a phone call.
Was it another friend?
It was.
You chasing man?
It was agency and friend. So a friend had a room at the time, said, look, like agency, I'd just done Fashion Week there.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that, I was, again, like I say, I'm growing. Like if you met me last year, you just say it like, Bob, you've grown so much again, like she's always growing. But last year when I went, I was so caught on the high of Fashion Week. I was like, oh my God, Sydney's amazing. This is great. And then I one time moved there and it's just very different. Like I think it's just a lot. I find us Murrays and us Islanders up here in Queensland, far north Queensland, we're just like as one. We're all like, it's very cliquey down there in a way. Yeah. And I find everyone's a bit like competing. You find that there's a bit of I have found some beautiful mob that I'm close to that I hold like very close to my heart and we uplift each other. But I did notice there's not such a sense of community. Like it's more the community's for show, because everyone's trying to make something and be a big star.
Of course.
And,
that's Sydney, right?
That's Sydney.
That's what
everyone
the big
goes there
smoke does.
Yeah.
Kind of can eat you up and spit you out as well, right?
Yeah, and it felt like that at first. It was very overwhelming.
Yes. This is good that you're talking about this.
Yeah, because I know so many young models that I'm meeting, bubbers, that are, my advice, honestly, would be if you're thinking of moving to Sydney, I would honestly say, build a friendship with someone, or like you got a sis like me that lives there current. Network so you have someone to stay with. Go there for 2 weeks, work for 2 weeks, come home. But it's not a kind of place you want to live. Like I'm always like, my landlord is like, you're never home. Like not that he thinks, but they do inspections and then he's just like, I tried to knock on your door and you went there. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in Melbourne, I'm in Brisbane, I'm here. Like, cause
she got a life.
Yeah, she's got a life. But also it's just like Sydney, when you're not always busy as well. Work is like, it's seasonal, it comes and goes, especially in the modeling scene. And it's like, you stay there. It's just, you get really lonely. Like, no, it's just not the same connections I had here. Like, I do miss it. Like, I'm always FaceTiming my sisters and just my brothers up here.
We are a people that are part of a mob.
It's like, it's
our
proper,
community. Like, we belong. We've got a place in a community. We're part of a mob, right? Mm-hmm. So when you go to a place like Sydney, everything is so spread out. So you've got Western Sydney or the mob out there and like Mount Druitt or Campbelltown and... So that's their mob out there. Then you've got the kind of, Redfern mob, like that's my mob.
Yeah.
And then you've got the other mob, like Lapa, which is not far from Redfern.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any mob. Well, my titty girl Jaron, when I went over the Harbour Bridge to get to Warringah Mall, and she had a shop there called Trading Black.
Oh, yes. I've heard this.
I never thought that there was mob over the Harbour Bridge.
Well, I've never been over either because I'll tell you, Mum's always like, get out the house, Bob. Like, because I'm small, just like... Yes. Even just like walking the road, I'll smile at some people would change. Actually, like I was living in Marrickville and like people would change the side of the road when I would be walking up. And
there's
just
still
like,
a lot of that racism.
It's still a lot of that there. Yeah. And it was just kind of like,
I don't know how to navigate
like
this person.
Especially like I've got the hair slicked up today, but it's big afro. Normally we see it on the runway. And I'll be going to a casting and you'll just see people like, not too sure, don't know how to take it. And so it's definitely, but it's a statement in itself and that's why.
Man,
so
you have a right.
She's exactly. I say there's two of us here now.
I love it. I want to know, did you always want to be a model?
No. So back in Adelaide, my sister, she saw this modelling application and we won't name the agency because there's an interesting story we will tell about them.
Yes.
But pretty much, she showed it to me and this was right after I was at this college getting all this racism. I was, honestly, so we talked about depression. I was on antidepressants. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression at 11, which was just crazy. And when I got to like 15, I was just like, I don't want to be these Western words. Like, don't put me on medication and try to numb me. Like, I'm going to get better. Like, I'm not going to be like this forever. And it felt like it was becoming that. Yeah. And, it was hard, but I was 13 and I had tried to commit because of how badly I just like throughout primary school, it was just ongoing. And I realized like at one point in my life, I was so ashamed to share that with people. But then I realized like it's such a,
it's like sometimes like,
it's part of my story. But sometimes I'm in Sydney and I'm beating myself up like I'm not doing enough. And then I'm like, wait a second,
I'm
baby
alive.
girl, you're 19, I'm
here.
alive.
I'm still here.
When I did that, I was like, you're not going to reach 18. You're not going to be doing what you're doing. And so I didn't want to do modeling. I was in that dark place when this happened. And I was not wearing my curly Afro hair. Straightened it every day. It was moving. It was dead. And my sister, she was like, look, Baba, I think you should do this, And I was like, and Mum was there, and I was like, absolutely not, because there's no one who looks like me in that industry, and no, I'm not doing it.
Naomi Campbell.
Yeah.
Iman. Elaine George. Auntie Elaine. Had Sasha Sarago.
Yep.
There's been a few, and we're talking about out of thousands.
Right.
We can name those black women on one hand. Yeah.
And it's tough. And when I said that, my mom just looked one time at me, and it was funny because she was like on her laptop working away, and she just looked over and she was like, and that's exactly why you do it, bub. And then like turned away, like to let that simmer me. And I got real I was like, that I was 14 at the time. So I was 13, when this first happened. So I was like, I looked at her like cheeky ways, and I was like, how are you going to say that? Like, because it got me. I was like, she's right, you know? And I walked off and I was huffing and puffing, and then I walked back in like 10 minutes later, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I did it. And the week...
Was it a competition?
So you went into the agency. It was a day, a bunch of girls, and then they picked who they were going to sign. And it was just, it is what it is,
And they signed you?
And they signed me, and it was great at the time. It was great.
At 13, you were signed to your first agency.
First agency. And it was crazy because like I can proudly say like I love myself now, but at that time, baby girl, she was so dark, hurt. She was so like, if we actually, I archived it from my profile, but the first ever shoot I did with my Afro, you can see it in the eyes. You can see this.
That you weren't in a happy place.
Yeah, you could just see, Baba has so much pain in there right now. And I'm so glad that it's like now people, even I've been walking Brisbane Fashion Fest this week, done free shows now, and practically I've been walking outside the show, and people just like, you're so, like, just you have this,
radiate
they
this
just have,
beauty.
you have this beautiful energy, this essence about you, like,
and because you've done a lot of self-work and inner work,
and I've learned to also hold that inner child inside. We forget about that, and we think that it's never going to come back, but like we said earlier, it does. And it's just so important to show love to those wounds, like acknowledge them. And that's why I said to myself, like, I even used to ask, like, this is Cindy Crawford. She's a model, international model, who's very famous, and she's known for her beauty mark here.
Yes.
And when I was a baby, I used to get teased because my parents unfortunately were split, and I used to go back to see Dad up in Cairns, Far North Queensland, and go back home. But like
teased.
I would get teased, and they would say, these little collar means white. These little collar kids would say, that's a part of your father, like left on you. That's all he's got left on you. Like he doesn't care about you. That's just a speck of him. And so, and they'd say it's an ugly mark. And I would, so my 11th birthday, I'd researched laser removal, and I begged Mum and my nan to pay for it. And they just sat me down.
So this is a beauty spot.
And they sat me down. They were like, baby, I know it's so hard to see, but one day you're going to love all these things. You don't see the beauty, but you are so beautiful. And I learned to love that. And that's why I really push for the modeling now. Like even, so I was doing it from 13, got my first job a week later after getting signed, Mecca. It was amazing. I did, and I got to wear my Afro for Mecca Max in Melbourne. Me and Mum flew there. It was insane. If we watched it, like baby face, it was crazy. And you could see the dead ends because I hadn't cut my hair. So before I moved to Brisbane.
Who got time or money for that?
I couldn't. So I had these dead ends, but they loved me anyways. I did a little cheeky wink. It was so cute. And then the next week I was just like, no, I want to wrap my curls. I want to do this. And so I actually cut it short to the point where I couldn't tie it up. And that gave me the time to learn to love my crown, because literally a month ago I was back home on the islands. I just stayed Thursday Island with my auntie that lives there. And I went to the school. Oh my gosh. I went to the state school there, high school, and I talked to the year 9 and 10 girls, year 11.
Was this did you ever go to those schools?
No, I didn't, unfortunately. But like,
this is your community.
Young girls, this is my community. And this is my first time ever going to talk to schoolgirls, and it's on my motherland.
As like a woman, young woman.
So we printed a bunch of, my auntie works at Simon on the radio there, and I had done an interview the day before. So all these girls were like, they already knew who I was because they had written about me in the Torres Strait News. Back home, they're like, that's Miss Straight there.
Of course. Like,
they love me.
You're the pin-up girl.
Yeah, I'm putting us on, I'm
putting
my
your
community
people on the map.
And like, especially down Sydney, they're always like, hey, who's Torres Strait? Like, where's that? And I'm like,
I have no idea.
This is where it is, and put respect on us. And also, like, we are actually front line of climate change at the moment. So we have a climate justice case called Islands Are Home. And I actually could have been overseas right now. My agents were like, they're always pushing, go to London, go to Milan. Yeah. I was like, I'm 19, I got time.
Yes.
And I kind of actually gave myself an ultimatum. And I was like, if I leave and I come back in, because we had reports that in about 10 years, our islands are going to be gone.
Underwater.
We've already had to pick up.
Didn't that happen to Saibai?
Yes. So Dad had to leave Boigu. Dad's in Cairns now. Saibai, just like, there's mangroves on islands that there never were. Like, the old women are crying and telling you, like, this is not supposed to be here. Like,
the seas are rising.
And like, people talk about prices and being expensive here in the city. It's like $12 to buy bread there. We live off the land, but because coastal erosion and king tides, we can't live off the land and we have to buy from the shops. But then the locals don't, and then back home, the locals don't get employed. They pay collars. They build them beautiful houses up in the hills there. And the families live in like 2 bedrooms. So like my auntie.
Yeah, the overcrowded, 20 people in the house.
Yep, like how it is. And
things haven't really changed.
It hasn't changed. And so I realized.
We're talking about very remote Australia.
Remote Australia. And when I speak for all of Indigenous Australia because it's, I had a previous partner. I was in the NT and I saw his community and I saw the prices there. And, you just hear more and more stories and you see the photos and we try to post awareness, but it's like, how much do we have to say for them to actually listen? Like, you saw when there was a cabbage price raise last year and everyone was going off and it was just like, go live out in the communities and see how see how much one steak costs in Alice Springs.
Well, $88 for a 6-pack of lamb chops.
Literally,
$88.
yep. Like,
literally, I saw tomatoes for maybe $18 a kilo.
Like, we can go to the shops. We can get white bread for what, $5?
Or 99 cents.
We can get all that for under $20. Your breakfast needs, and it's like 45 just for the bare minimum.
So you get to, when you think about being a model, you get to actually speak about issues
about that, and that's
that impact on our people.
Literally, and that's why. So I was reached out to from Miss Universe Australia. Start of this year, they asked me to be a part of their competition. And again, I had that same kind of feeling when I looked at the videos. I didn't see myself. I didn't see First Nation Australia at all represented in that. I saw a kind of run-up video of their previous year and I was like, kind of did that gulp, like, okay, that's what we're looking at. And they kept reaching out. And then I don't know, there's a woman named Maria Thurl that did it in 2020.
Can we just give that beautiful...
Yeah, she's amazing.
Sister, a shout out.
She's incredible.
Telling her that you need to get on this podcast. She definitely needs to now come on. Now she's got her podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
I follow her and she knows I follow her and I love everything that she posts. I just love the fact that this sister is living her best life.
Exactly. I love that. From 2020, she did that and she's just jetted off. She's flying, she's shining bright, she's doing her. God. And so in a way, at first I was like, no, because I was watching that video. And then I have a friend, James Parr, he's an Indigenous model, and he's close friends with her. And I just was like, I was like, oh, Maria. And then I remembered when she did it. And then I also remembered just like, bless her heart, but she speaks on the project a lot and they asked her about the voice and they asked her a few times about just Indigenous Australian issues. And in that moment, I had a dream and my grandmother has passed away and I saw her in my dream and I'm also the namesake of my auntie who also passed away. And my name means how things used to be in the olden days and she's a very old soul. And I always have just been connected to them. I always get these callings, I call them.
Oh, yeah, they speak to us.
They speak to us. And I had this dream. And I just like, again, they never speak in these dreams. They look at me with their eyes and they tell me. And I had this dream and it was just like, they were like, you're not going overseas this year, you're staying one time. And you're going to, because, we had so it's so sad, but September the 26th, I believe it was, or 25th, the UN supported the Torres Strait Islands, our climate case. We're not even a country. They support us, the smallest place ever, that the Australian government are ignoring my people's human rights. For the past 3 years, we've been known about this, and all they've offered us is sandbags. They've ignored our invitations to come home to talk to our elders, to actually work out what we need to do. They keep doing oiling.
They don't see this as a climate emergency.
It's about to happen to Tiwi Islands as well. They were struggling. And it's like, do you not understand, if you don't learn from us, it's going to happen to Australia next. Like, we're a part of your country.
Yeah, this is a global warming.
Because we're not a tourist attraction, it's a blind eye. And it's about to be a year since that UN decision. They've done nothing, from what I'm aware of, and it's painful, to think of even going back there. There's an energy, and our elders said last year when we got that decision, we did a collab with Ben and Jerry's. It was really beautiful. They did a special collaboration. You see
it everywhere in Ben and Jerry's stores.
And we went to me and my sister represented Islands our home, and we went up to Cairns and we went to the premiere there, and we invited him and we gave him the tub. We knocked on his door and he wasn't there, but we gave him to his office and we were like, you give this to him and tell him he's invited from our mayor, Yasem Mosby, to come up to see what's happening back home, to actually understand how our people and our way of life is, and that we're affected. But our elders said, if our islands go, we go with it. And I think nothing. That broke me to hear that from, that was like, so when that dream of my grandmother and my auntie were looking at me, I was like, I replied to the Miss Universe Australia people, and the one part of the application was to send a video on why you want to be a part. And I sent my video.
Yes.
I had my afro out and I sat myself down. I said, you've never had a First Nations queen in this country called Australia. This is First Nation land, and it's about time you have that representation, and I'm here to be that.
Damn. And that's like a mic drop.
One time, and I literally, like, my mum was like, and I was like, Mum, and
you need to turn up.
They loved it
with that confidence,
because they like, and bring the woman. So the director, she is such a lovely woman. Her name's Sophia, and even my first overseas trip 2 weeks ago, I was in Vietnam. Paid for the whole trip. I just had to get my passport.
So what did you do in Vietnam?
So we did public training. We did walk training. It's from Miss Universe Australia. I went on that trip and I did feel a lot of deflection. It was hard for me as well. My dad the week before had a heart attack. So, Yusabe and our culture, we're always there for our family. I felt like a horrible daughter not being at his side, not being there with him.
But at the same time, you knew.
Oh, and he said to me, he was like, you know where you need to be right now.
Yeah.
But I was filled with grief. My first time being overseas, it wasn't with any sisters. I didn't have a sister there, no family, no women of colour. There was one other woman of colour, but she was from the WA Girls. We didn't fly overseas together. But, it was just like, I was so overwhelmed. And so those first few days, I was very eaten up by that deflection. And one time, I just reminded myself, I was like, they're actually so shocked because I'm like, so when I got there, none of them knew I was 19. They found out, their jaws dropped to their, they freaked out. They were like, holy, like this
because
girl's
your
been
maturity is
and
beyond your years.
How I hold myself, they were like, what, you live alone? Like, and like some of them like,
where's your mum and dad?
They live in another state. I get the question, do your parents care about you a lot? And I'm like, yeah, they're actually really proud of me. We're quite close, thank you. But it's been, the competitions, it's had its highs and lows. Like I've been asked to fake tan at one point, and that was a melanin. I'm like, you think I'm looking pale, put me in the sun, it's okay. We don't need that. I don't use that. And there's just been a few obstacles, it's a bit of, it's a competition. So there's got to be some little cattiness.
Cutthroat.
Yeah, but I'm just like, I've been modelling for 5 years now. So it's like, baby girl.
I didn't turn up yesterday.
Yeah, like,
you may not know who I am.
I'm good, like, I'm okay. Like, I may not matter in your community, but in mine, I matter. And that's what matters to me. And that's what I think, to me, I'm currently the top fundraiser. I've raised 14 grand. I did one fundraiser about 3 months ago, and I just keep getting donations because I think the biggest thing about me is when I work with people, I tell them about our culture. I teach them about like Torres Strait Islanders and a mainland.
You're not just a beautiful face.
And then I also connect with them. And so there's people from 4 years ago that work with me that are donating because they just are like, I'm so proud of you. And because that beautiful, like I say to people, you can be beautiful outside, but if your inside is, and that's what trauma, that will make you ugly on the inside. You can't just think outside matters.
And it's
inside
not going to
does.
last
It
long.
won't last. It won't last
It's not
long.
sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And even in the beauty industry now, people are actually, like, even in the modelling, they're wanting more stories of the models. They're wanting you to actually have a personality. And it's like, if you're just so surface and have no depth to you.
Yeah.
It
doesn't last long.
It doesn't last long. So
the cracks will show soon.
No shade, but I think the difference between me and the other girls is I noticed when we were doing the public speaking and all that, they were making a version of themselves that they thought they wanted. And I think why I stood out so much and why I really connected to the judges that were on the trip was because they could just see I was just myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't change for them.
You're just speaking
and
truth.
Like, I even had a little, like, so it's husband and wife that run it, Troy and Sophia. And I even, would have little political discussions with Troy, and he loved it. He's like, I can't believe a 19-year-old is like this, like, educated, mature, and talking back to me like this.
Knows what's going on.
At one point I was giving him advice, and he was like, I can't. A 19-year-old is giving me advice. And I was like, hey, mate, like, someone's...
Hey, welcome to our world.
Literally.
When we got 19-year-olds, literally. It's like we were kind of... I would say from a very young age, like, little girls, young girls, we naturally grow into women. Yeah. We're around the women. Oh. We're included in everything.
I would say things to my mum when I was a small girl, and she'd be like, one time, they'd all look like, what did she just say?
Yeah.
Like,
so our culture, to draw strength from our culture, because a lot of people kind of see us through this kind of, negative lens or their stereotypes around.
Oh, the stereotypes.
So you're breaking that down,
like
smashing them.
When I was getting that bullying, I was getting those kids telling me, like, I had siblings in another system. They were saying you're going to be just like them. You're going to be on drugs. You're going to be an alcoholic. And I just was like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm not going to fall into your stereotype of what you think I'm made to be because I'm meant for so much more. And I felt that. And I just was like, one time, like, I just always, whenever I feel beaten down, wherever I'm working, I just like bigger picture. I one time, like, it's like a little, I don't physically pinch my body or anything, but it's like pinching myself and being like, hey, sissy,
this is where
I'm not even just doing this for me anymore. It's for so much more. It's for all of us. It's so that we finally have a voice. And it's not just that tokenistic, like, want us to all look the same. It's like, notice that Indigenous Australia, we have so much individual beauty in, like, WA, in Queensland, in New South Wales, in Victoria, like every freaking state. And it's just like, they like one time, like, they want that selective. They want to pick one of us every season. That's how it is right now in the fashion industry. They pick their token Indigenous model. They love them and then dispose onto the next. And it's like, you can't do that because... No, you're just going to one time have us all here. We're taking up space now.
Of course.
We're taking up space and we're staying. And it's about time.
I love this.
It's about, and we've got to, because it's,
enjoy it.
We think about it, we weren't welcomed for long. It took time for us to be here. And so that's why, it does feel like we have to work harder. And we do. We do have to work harder to prove us.
Of course.
To prove that we're worthy of being there. But, if we really, like, I just tell all my babies, like, even I went to Kaya for the first time.
In Cairns,
In Cairns. And it was like, I went to the fashion show with Ani Alvrina Johnson from Yarrabah.
Oh, my goodness.
Shout out to Ani Alvrina.
We are going to do some black magic.
I told her. You're going to do one
I met her recently.
That is so, I've known her since I was 17. She has kind of become like a mentor to me. We are so close. It. So she got me a ticket. We sat front row. Every time the girls turned, when they first realised I was there, I didn't realise, like, because down south, you're nobody. I'm nobody
no one knows
to them.
You and
then on the island, it was just like these babies everywhere. They're crying, like, meeting me. They're like, I look up to you so much. To see these babies ask me how I get my, like, kuruf, that means afro back home.
Yes.
They're like, how do I get my kuruf hair like yours? And I'm like teaching them.
My sister.
But I watched this show, and pretty much every time, so the first time they actually saw me, it was right in line. Then you just saw them straighten up. They got all, like, hyped up. They started walking even, like, prouder. They looked at me in the aisles like, what? Like, hyping them up. Anyways, end of the show, I ended up making friends with half of them. They were all hugging me. One of them was like, Sissy, I was actually watching your videos before I walked out to hype me up because I see how you walk with our people. And that's what I actually always want to tell young Indigenous models is you feel nervous.
Literally.
If you feel nervous when you're walking out, one time, like, it's okay if you're not in the church, but I pray first and I ask for, I say, Heavenly Father and my ancestors to walk with me and guide me with strength right now and to, walk with me as one. And you honestly, when you do that, you breathe and you just like, and you feel it. Like, it's like, I always just get like, I just feel my backbone go like straight up and I just feel like this energy and I walk and that's why me and Ani Alvreda connected, because I met her Brisbane at, I think it was Brisbane Festival, and First Nation Fashion Design had a show and she was in it. And I didn't walk in her collection, but we did videos and I got to wear it. And she walked up to me and she was like, baby, not every model knows how to be a storyteller, but you are. And you know how to, like, you put a garment on and you transform that, and you know how to.
Yes.
And ever since then, like, every time I go back to Cairns, road trip to Yarrabah, shoot with her, like, I literally just did one.
Well, we are going to do a road trip together. I am coming.
Yep.
I've been to Yarrabah once, and I met the mayor and his beautiful wife recently. We were at the Supply Nation big conference and gala in Sydney recently. But I'm so dying to hear, what do you really want? Like, what's something, is there a brand that you want to represent? Is there a show? And I know that Miss Universe is kind of the pinnacle with beauty pageants. But at 19, what have you got your kind of eyes set on? Your heart set on? Is there something?
First thing, my heart is like the biggest thing that I'm set on first is like actually putting like just a show, like, because yes, we have like FNFD, but I'm doing those shows and I'm doing IFP, Indigenous Fashion Projects, First Nation Fashion Design, and down Sydney, it's still not respected where it's due. Like it's just like, it feels wrong to me, because what it is I'll go overseas for 3 months and I could come back and every single fashion brand wants me here now. And that's not, it's just like, I one time said to myself, I'm going to get the respect where it's due for us. So it's just like, no other baby has to deal with what I've had to be like dealing with, like talking about, you're so articulately spoken, you speak so well and I'm like,
an Aboriginal
for
person?
what? Like, why is it so shocking to you that I hold myself with this,
it still happens,
And even when they make their backhand, I've had sisters come next to me, their fake hands, oh, we're like the same colour, sissy. And I'm just like,
oh no, this is the industry though.
I turn to them and I'm like, oh, so do you deal with the lateral violence of this country? And like,
because of the colour of your skin, I can wash it off.
You have no clue. Don't talk to me that we're the same colour. But, that's why I'm leading by example. So the biggest goal for me is, I actually realised, so this is the thing, I've been doing it for 5 years, and the more I've gotten older, the more I've been louder in what I stand for. Like I called out Kevin Murphy last year at Melbourne Fashion Week. I got a formal apology out of them on Instagram. The next year I went to Fashion Week there. Every makeup artist had an afro. I was treated like a little princess taken to my
They're good.
Because I called...
you shouldn't have had to call them out.
Exactly. Because so what happened was, I did the show. I was the only black model that was ignored. It was an Indigenous show as well. It was so sad, but I was the only one with big afro hair. Ignored. And then they did their show wrap up and every photo was of me and they were talking about their textured styles. And I commented and I was like, that's shame. Like, why are you doing that? And it blew up, but it was great. But my voice has... Because I'm not a Nepo baby. I don't come from a white man who's an actor or someone important in Australia. And I'm a black person. I'm an Indigenous person from Australia. And we, like I said, we have to prove it harder. And I'm starting to become that model that speaks up too much. And so the Miss Universe Australia thing, I thought for in my community, that's a title to your name. Like, as much as it's amazing, like for even Maria being the brown woman she is, that gave her the platform she has now to grow to the woman she is today. Not that, but that was what she needed. She needed, and what it is we had the plan. We have the plan.
Yeah.
We're just needing the platform. And so I one time clocked in. I was just like, okay, I'm going to play this game because I don't have a title to my name. I'm not like, it's crazy, but like, it's a lot easier for the college girls here. They can literally just take photos. They can get famous on TikTok and they can just start getting work like that. And it's just like, they have a blue tick next to their name that they haven't paid for.
Yes.
And that, but those, it's so crazy. But in the game here, it matters.
It does.
And I'm just like, okay, I'll play the game. I'll play it so that one time I can just yell so loud for my community, and then you guys can't silence me so quickly.
I cannot wait to see what's next in your amazing life. You're only 19.
19. So the plans are obviously walk Paris, Milan, London. We've got that's all ahead. But
do it all. Hey, don't forget me.
Yeah, I'll never forget you, my love. But like literally, that's the plans. But right now, where my heart actually lies, it's like. It would actually break my heart to just go and then they all start because that's what it is, especially in the modelling game. You go and make something of yourself.
Yes.
And then they're all like, she's a queen. They want you
and
on the cover of Vogue now.
Yeah, they want to know you then.
Like, no, like, love me now or love me never. Like,
well, let me say, I will be in touch.
We'll stay in touch, definitely.
Stay in touch and see how you're going. And when I'm in Sydney, let's catch up.
We'll catch up.
And we'll do some lunch.
Yeah, we'll do some lunch, definitely.
I cannot wait. I'm like so excited. And I'm just
having me.
Really happy for especially a young Indigenous woman that's only 19 to be able to achieve what you have. So all of these young, deadly women, you don't have to be black women, but all of you deadly young women that are aspiring or wanting to be a model, then reach out to this sister girl. I'm pretty sure.
And also don't underestimate yourself.
Yeah. She's humble.
Yeah, I'm humble. I'm humble queen. But don't underestimate yourself. Like you can do whatever you set your mind to. Just know that you are going to be your biggest barrier if you choose to not believe.
There you go. Yeah. Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourselves.
An amazing way to now wrap up this deadly yarn. Yeah. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Until next time, bye for now.
Yo.
Thank you. If you'd like any more info on today's guest, please visit our show notes in the episode description. A big shout out to all you Deadly Mob and allies who continue to listen, watch and support our podcast. Your feedback means the world. You can rate and review the podcast on Apple and Spotify, or even head to our socials and YouTube channel and drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. The Black Magic Woman podcast is produced by Clint Curtis.